Shalom. I'm Rabbi Nathan Davidovich, speaking to you on behalf of the Web Yeshiva, talking to you from Efrat, Israel. I'm going to talk about one aspect of this week's Torah reading, Parsha Reaye, and that is the aspect of tzedakah. And we're going to talk about how the aspect of tzedakah, the mitzvah of tzedakah, of charity, is really the foundation of Emunah, of faith and belief in God. The Torah contains the following sentences. It says, Ki yiyeh b'cha evyon me'echad achecha v'achad shorecha v'artzecha. If you have a poor person in your land, lo tametz es levavacha v'lo tikpotz es yadecha, you shouldn't harden your heart towards them and close your hand from this poor person, but you should open your hand. And it says, further on, it says, Noson titen lo, you should give to this poor person, below yera levavacha b'sitcha lo, and you shouldn't have a bad feeling in giving it to him. You shouldn't think that, why do I have to do this? Why am I bothered to give this tzedakah? I could use this money for so many other things. You're giving it, but you're not giving it with simcha. So the Torah is telling us that not to do that. Now it's interesting because any other mitzvah you can do, whether you do the mitzvah with simcha or not, with joy or not, the mitzvah is still good. This mitzvah you're supposed to do with simcha, with joy. The Rambam says that a person should be so careful with the concept of charity more than any other positive commandment. And the Gemara in Bava Basra says that the mitzvah of tzedakah, the mitzvah of giving charity, is of the same weight, is equal to all of the other mitzvot in the Torah. The Tivot Shalom brings down that the root of this mitzvah of charity is Emunah. Emunah, faith and belief in God. Why? Because as it says in Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Lezer Ish Bartuta Omer, he said, Tein lo mishalo, you should give of your own. Why? She'ata v'shalecha shelo, because you and everything that you have really belongs to God. We're only here as a treasurer, so to speak, to be able to hand out the money as God sees fit. It's not your money. You can't take it. You can't take it with you. There's a couple of interesting stories I want to just talk to you about tzedakah. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev told his community, his Jewish community, when they were going to have meetings, don't bother calling him to a meeting unless they're going to discuss something that's new and hasn't been done before. He didn't want to waste his time. So they call him to a meeting and they say, we've got an idea. And this is what they're discussing. They said, we're going to, instead of having to give money to each individual who comes looking for money, we're going to have a tzedakah box, a box where anybody who wants to give money, we'll just put the money in the box and then we'll distribute it to poor people. And he got upset. He says, this is something new that you're talking about? This is not new. This happened already in Sodom and Gomorrah when it was prohibited to give any money to a poor person. And some young girl who gave a piece of bread to a poor person was horribly tortured. He says they must have had the same kind of a thing, a box, so they couldn't look in the eyes of the poor person and see his plight. Reb Shlomo Carlebach tells a beautiful story, which I can only kind of hit the highlights of. Yosela Kamtzan, Yosela the miser. He tells a story about 400 years ago in Lemberg. There was the whole town was very poor. The Jewish community was extremely impoverished, and there was one wealthy person, Yosela. And this person was never known to give any money to anybody. And it came time he was on his deathbed, and they called the Chevra Kadisha, the burial committee, in to talk to him. And they said, look, you've not given any tzedakah, you've not given any money. It's going to cost you 1,000 rubles for us to bury you. And he says, forget it. I won't even give you 50 rubles. I'll bury myself. And they got angry, they left, and within moments he died. And he laid unburied for several days. And finally somebody in the middle of the night took pity on and said, how can we leave this person without being buried? And snuck in and himself took him to a cemetery, dug a grave, and buried him. On Thursday of that week, a person came to the Rabbi Kalman of the city, and said, Rabbi, I need some money to buy my family food for Shabbos. And he says, okay, he'll be happy to give you. And he says, but you've been in this community for 20 years. I've known you for 20 years. And why haven't you come before? And he said, it was strangely enough that every Thursday morning I would open my door and I'd find an envelope there. And it had exactly the money that I needed in that envelope. And that happened every single week. Strange story. Pretty soon another person came in with the same story. The only difference was one person needed 10 rubles for the food, one needed 40, etc. And they finally realized. So they asked the person, well, did you ever go to Yosula, the rich man? And each one had the same story. Yes, we went to him once. He invited us in, gave us a cup of tea. He asked us what our story was, and we told him exactly what's happening. He said, how many children do you have? He said, oh, it's such a heartbreaking story. You don't have money to feed your family. How much do you need for your family? He said, I need 40 rubles a week, whatever the figure was. And he said, oh, such a terrible story. And all of a sudden, he just turned into a different person. And he said, what do you think, I'm crazy? I'm not going to give you money. Get out of my house. Threw them out of the house. And that Thursday morning, they opened their door and they found exactly the money that they said they needed anonymously. And they realized finally that it was this Yosula, the holy miser, who was putting the money in anonymously. He didn't want to see. Didn't want them to know that he was giving this money. So of course the story repeated itself. Every one of the townspeople was benefiting from his life. They all repented. The rabbi had them all fast, asking forgiveness. And in a dream, Yosula Kamsan came to the rabbi, and the rabbi says, we're so sorry, we're trying to do tshuva, trying to repent, we're so sorry. Well, he says, don't worry, I was accompanied to Gan Eden, to my place in heaven by Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Beautiful story. It shows two aspects of giving tzedakah. The one aspect with Yosula Kamsan was he wanted to be totally anonymous. He didn't want to have anybody know who he was. The other aspect with Rabbi Yitzchak, the Rebbe's story, was that he thought it was important for people to see the poor person, to arouse your emotions so that you would then give. And that this is the concept, and this is what the Torah is telling us, to give with simcha, with joy. When a poor person comes to your house asking for tzedakah, don't feel, oh, I'm being put upon. Thank him for coming there, giving you the opportunity to do this mitzvah, do it with joy. Invite him into your house. And this is the real epitome of what being a Jew is like. The real emunah that you can have, the real belief in God, trusting in God, that knowing that what you have is really God's. So therefore, it's easy to give it away. Give it away with simcha. Let's have emunah, total faith, belief in God with simcha. Thank you for listening on behalf of the webyeshiva.org. I wish everybody a wonderful, wonderful Shabbat, a Shabbat of true Emunah, which you also get by a true observance of Shabbat. Thank you for listening on behalf of the webyeshiva.org. Shabbat Shalom. We'll talk to you, God willing, next week.